Hey everyone, welcome to my vanilla survival server. This is my 700 sub celebration video. First off, I just wanted to say thank you all so much. I never thought that I would get such a big following from the random contraptions that I put online. Also, I wanted to thank you for your comments and feedback. It's been so great having a chance to get to interact with and know some of you, and to know that I'm helping you out with the problems in your Minecraft world. I think my passion is always going to be redstone stuff and automating things in a way that makes my life and hopefully your life a little bit easier. But truth be told, I wouldn't have thought of any of that stuff if it hadn't been for needing it in my survival world first. So I thought it would be a cool idea to show you my primary source of inspiration, which is my world and more specifically my base. I think my main goal is to show you some hopefully cool stuff, maybe give you some build ideas, show you some cool contraptions. But I think my really ambitious goal is to help those of you who are in that situation that I was in, where you're kind of hitting that plateau, you have all the stuff you need, and you're looking for a reason to keep playing. So we are starting the tour from the exit of my base. My base is down there, and it has a bubble elevator that takes you up to this tiny little ship. Parked at this enormous mega structure that Silly made before, or he was making it while I was coming onto the server. It's always a bit intimidating to go into a world where there's all this beautiful stuff, and it's like you don't really know exactly how you're going to contribute. You know, I wasn't really much of a builder going into this, and I really felt like this was an opportunity for me to level up my game. I spent a lot of time on this server just walking around trying to figure out what I wanted to make. YouTube has been a great resource for getting build ideas and learning fundamental building concepts like depth, texturing, gradients. But I really didn't know what to do with that information until I started thinking about the story of my base. I wanted it to revolve around this advanced civilization that had left a long time ago. I think it's a pretty common theme in the Minecraft world lore that I've seen, but that's partially because of how powerful nostalgia can feel in this game. I wanted it to feel like there were still traces of these people even though they had left and their base may be breaking down a bit. I love hidden rooms and secret doors and Easter eggs, and I feel like it's such a cool way to pull someone into a story. So we are going to head over to my base, which is in this tower, past this kind of unintentional liminal space. So here we are on the main floor. It was really fun to try and introduce a broken down feeling to this place. I'd never done that before. The last time I played was 1.8, so waterlogged stairs were new to me when I came back to the game. I think they provide a really nice accent to a floor pattern, but what's even better is that they give you an infinite water source everywhere around the ground floor. Glazed terracotta was also something that was new to the game when I was coming back, and I got very excited and put it into my ceiling pretty early. And I think it locked in not just the color scheme for the first floor, but also for the whole base in general. Lots of grays, blues, and greens. I'm reasonably happy with it, but it has forced me to become a little bit more creative with finding ways of making gray look interesting, with stuff like dead brain coral. If you look over here, we have a combination bread and sugarcane farm. I wanted to cover up the redstone that was in the back here, so I built out a couple extra blocks and tried to make it look like a roadside stand or a farmer's market kiosk. I really admire players who can look at a big open space like this and see the potential in it. I definitely don't feel like I have that vision yet. Honestly, I found the possibilities of having a space this wide open overwhelming, so I needed to impose constraints in some way, and this is what I came up with. These sort of mini window wall things. This is a pretty standard kelp farm. I think this design is from Ilmango. There's a flying machine down here, and when it gets triggered, it makes its way across, breaks the kelp at the bottom, and the kelp makes its way over into the processing area, which is behind this wall. And so to trigger the door, we have to land on the step. Yep, right here. You have to land on the bottom part of this step. Kind of annoying. I might need to fix that. So this is the kelp processing area. You can see these vents or power ducts or whatever these are. And I'm not sure I like this warm feeling with like the wood and the shroom lights here with this floor pattern. But I thought it was kind of a cool contrast. I might wind up replacing it if I can think of something better. Another thing I wanted to point out too is that sort of like in keeping with the story of this space, some of the technology in Redstone was here before I got here. When I wanted to emphasize that, I tried using a different palette for Redstone with oak and stone here. I thought it was kind of a cool way to build a visual timeline of contraptions throughout the base. So if we head down here, and we're actually using command blocks to compress the dried kelp here. We've been using command blocks for this type of compression for probably at least a year at this point. I figured out this solution after pulling out my hair, spending half an hour every day or two just compressing kelp into blocks. Let me know if you want me to walk through the details of how something like this works at some point. With auto crafting in place, it allows us to fully automate this process. The kelp blocks that come out of the dropper here go right back into the system, and the extra kelp makes its way over to this hopper minecart. If we make our way up here, we can see this tiny little room. I've been making a point lately to try and decorate every space, and that includes areas for redstone that I've tucked behind walls. So let's move on to the next room here. I'm sure some of you may already know where we're headed. If we hit this redstone ore, we can see that my storage system is hiding behind this wall. This is probably the reason that you're watching this video now, or that you probably even know who I am. And I've added some cool stuff to this room. Most of the time, I will just leave this open, and I can do that by disengaging this lever here. But yeah, this is my storage system. I'm not going to get into the details. I have plenty of videos related to this, so please check those out if you're interested. But just to kind of give you the overhead view of everything, this is a 2x hopper speed storage system. It takes every item type. It does category sorting, bulk storage, and has shulker box access as well. So this room is really kind of the hub of activity here. The kelp will travel down this path here. But one new addition is this section right here, and I'm pretty excited about it. If you've seen my last couple videos, you'll know that I'm working on this huge castle in the Nether. And one of the things I've done is design a shulker box sorting system specifically for that hall. I wanted it to sort of be our extra super bulk storage silo for any overflow that we might have. So the way this works is we just send our shulker boxes on through. On the Nether side, these shulker boxes go into a chest minecart, which is sent all the way to the Nether castle. And it takes chunk loaders the whole way to make sure that everything is loaded. But the thing I'm most excited to show you about this room is down below. We have this sort of sunken ancient city complete with its own guardians. This was a really fun project for me. I really enjoyed trying to translate the block palette from an ancient city into something that looked a little bit more like an ocean monument. I messed around with prismarine, and I think I tried stone as well, but this really kind of felt the best. And the sea pickles here, instead of candles, just totally pushed it over the edge for me. I also think that this introduces a lot of intrigue from like a lore perspective. Why was there something that looked like an ancient city underneath the base of these people? Did they live here first? And why did it flood? In case you're wondering, yeah, it's a total pain in the butt when something breaks in here, redstone-wise, but fortunately it's not something that's really happened yet, so just keep my fingers crossed in the meantime, I guess. But if you think of a way to incorporate this into the sunken ancient city a little bit more, let me know. Something else that you might notice is that we have these drainage pipes all around the room. And if you swim in here, you can see that this is actually an accessible tunnel system. And you can actually see that I've put up some dolphin chambers here. Those will give you dolphin's grace and allow you to move through the tunnels super fast, and it's so fun. And initially I made these tunnels with the hopes that a guardian would sort of swim through one and make it into my kelp farm. Just really wanted to freak my friends out when, you know, the kelp gets broken and there's like a guardian staring you in the face. But it never happened. So I thought I would extend this out a little bit more and just sort of like build a little bit more depth to the underwater component of this base. Like I said, it's just kind of another one of those areas where I want to reward curiosity. Like if someone comes down here, I want there to be something for them to find. I've just built these tunnels and I will take just about any excuse that I can to come down here because it is so much fun just to fly around. But in the spirit of rewarding curiosity, at the end of some of these tunnels, we actually have accessible doorways. I thought this was just another interesting thing to add to this underwater puzzle. Makes you wonder kind of what are these access points for? Nope. Moving on. The first thing that you'll probably notice is that we have this weird stair pattern thing here on the floor. I wanted it to feel like my base had an ancient power source running through it, or like an ancient engine powering it. And if it's an engine, it should move, right? This was a fun project for me because I really don't think I've tried to make anything before that had literally no purpose and was just supposed to look cool. But I really like this animation because it feels sort of like the base is breathing or power cycling in some way. I didn't want this thing's animation to become predictable, so I don't have it on a regular clock, it's actually randomized. And I'd love to put these all over the base, just so I can make it feel like the power is cycling through different areas of the base at different times. Moving on to the farm behind. Having open walls here really makes it easy for me to kind of just let my base sprawl, and I love the fact that we can sort of make this farm feel connected to the floor here. Just like the villagers that we have over there on the ground floor, these farmers are also caretakers of this place. We can go in, the farm is fully accessible, we just have farmers who are throwing crops to these villagers, and hopper minecarts are taking them up and putting them in storage up there. At the same time, we have all of these bee nests on both sides that will release the bees, which will then make their way over to the flowers over here and over there, and then hopefully on their way back into the nest will pollinate crops, which will speed up the farm and then also produce honey bottles and honeycomb. And I actually learned something new about bee nests recently. I learned that bees could only exit through the front of the nest, but they could re-enter through any side. And that kind of gave me some ideas for ways to cut down on lag, because I think that's really the main downside of this kind of a farm, is just that when the bees come out, things just get super laggy. That's not usually a problem, but if you have this happening next to your base like every 20 minutes, it can get pretty disruptive. I've turned these bee nests inward so that they are facing these fences, So whenever I want to let the bees out, all I have to do is flip a lever, and then these fences get pulled back. The really nice thing about this is that I can close them whenever I want. So I don't have to wait for all of the bees to get back in. I can just close it whenever, and they'll eventually make their way back into the nests and just not be able to get back out. And if we head over here, we can see the very beginnings of my bedroom. I've just started building this space up. This was originally just hot springs with nothing else, but after I put these walls in, it really made it feel a little bit more like a room, so I figured this seems like a pretty good place to put a bedroom. I recently started working on this ceiling pattern. I wanted it to feel like a forest canopy with the night sky poking through. Aside from that, I just have some really basic decorations. We'll have to check back in on this room in a later video. I'm pretty happy with how the hot springs came out. We can kind of see into the kelp farm here. But there's actually a little bit more than meets the eye with this room. If I were to put my helmet back on, we can see that this door over here opens, revealing a pretty big redstone lab. This door, as you can probably guess, is controlled by a calibrated skulk sensor that's set to, I think, a signal of 5. We can see the kelp farm over here, which provides a nice light source and kind of a cool wall texture. And something that you'll also notice is that just like the room in the kelp farm, I've used a lot of oak and stone here. And kind of just tried to make it look like a really old mine. I mostly just kind of wanted to indicate that I didn't build, but rather found this place. But this was, for me, just a really cool way to try and show the passage of time, and sort of maybe the transfer of technology, where I was building off of these old inventions, learning from them, and then used that to make my own stuff. But this is really a place where I did a lot of my early tinkering, and I decided to leave a lot of this stuff up, just in case other people on the server are interested in seeing how some of it works. Like, for instance, a randomizer, a small panel selector, some quick explanations on signal addition, and this. Now, if we head out, we can take a look at my panda sanctuary. World building aside, I was so excited when I found out that they added pandas to the game. They are by far my favorite animal, so as soon as I found one, I felt like I knew I had to incorporate it into the base somehow. So the name of the people who used to live in this base, they called themselves the Bearcats. And some of you may already know this, but Bearcat is just a direct translation of the characters for the word for panda in Chinese. I just thought it was kind of a cool way to work my favorite animal into the center of the story. So like I said, the Bearcats revered pandas, and that's why they sort of took their name, and they created a sanctuary for them here. I'm pretty happy with how the cherry blossom trees turned out. I feel like the default ones are just kind of like stubby, so I wanted to kind of make one that has a little bit more shape to it, and add a little bit more detail to like just the standard leaves here. The area is kind of cramped though. I'm thinking about building out down here. I'm just really worried about them wandering into the lava lake. But yeah, I think I'll sort of carefully wall that off and build this area out more. I was thinking also about putting some villagers in here to be sort of like panda nannies. If we head over here, I can show you one of my earliest farms. This is a pretty standard design for a melon and pumpkin farm. This was always one of the first farms that I used to make, just for the emeralds that it gives you access to through trading early in the game. But when I found out composters had been introduced into Minecraft, this became an absolute must, just because I could convert all of the overflow directly into bone meal, which was something that, especially early in the game, I felt like I needed a lot of. This was before I realized that there was a skeleton spawner behind my base. This was pretty much all solid deep slate here, so it took me a while to bring this wall back. And By the time I did, I kind of already had a composter set up with the melon and pumpkins. So then what I tried to focus on instead was making it something that was like pretty and would look good against the rest of the color scheme of this area. I used bone block to make it feel a little bit like a rib cage, I guess. But this is also a good source of arrows and bones for new players too. And if you head around to the back, you'll see there's this window down here with a lot of stuff going on underneath this farm. But if you look carefully, you can see this string. And if we trigger it, we can open up a door. This door uses what's called liquid update detection. There's a great video out by Lemon Arsonist. I'll put a link to it in the description. This can do anything that a regular observer can, except you can hide it underneath a slab or a stair. But yeah, just a really cool piece of tech. So you can see there's a lot going on here. I really wanted it to feel like this was a place where the Bearcats were learning about stuff. They were learning how to cultivate crops without sunlight, or studying new types of plants. I just wanted to kind of suggest that the Bearcats were like aware of the Nether, and show that maybe they were trying to study it. Alright, we can head back out. Let's make our way past the Panda Sanctuary. This yard here used to be empty, so I thought I would try to fill this space with a panda statue. It was really a fun, creative challenge. I've never done block art before, so it was fun to take a try. And we can actually climb this. And if we boop him on the nose, we can see that it actually reveals some QR code map art behind his eyes. And this will take you to a YouTube playlist that I've created. It's called The Playlist of the Bearcat, which has 1,700 of my favorite panda videos, and I am always adding to it. It seemed fitting to have some hidden treasure or secret stashed inside of a statue like this. And if we walk over here, you'll notice that there is a chest here. There's actually another secret door here, but activating the redstone ore doesn't open it. Putting something inside the chest doesn't open it either. If we take it out, we can hear something happening, but there's still no door opening. This door uses what's called a chest update detector. There's a great video that I saw on this recently by Mooing Cow Milk. I'll link to it in the description. I've modified this one so that the only way you can trigger it is if we click an empty inventory slot in the chest. Now we have entered the engine room. So this is underneath that waving stair contraption up top. I wanted this to feel like a power converter was pulling energy in and distributing it in some way around the base. Another thing you'll probably notice here is that the world's dragon egg is right behind this thing. So I wanted to show that like the egg was creating some sort of power that the Bearcats were drawing from. It just seems like a cool thing to tie in. I'm not totally dead set on this final design for the whole contraption, and I'm not totally sure what the logic is behind the way that this power works. But randomly, whenever the system triggers, it changes the beacon color and then sends a wave through the rest of the system. Another detail that I thought was cool is the use of lodestones here, so of course this was way more expensive than I wanted it to be. But I think the way that end rods connect with lodestones is just too perfect not to bring them together in some way. I also thought it was a really cool connection with the top part of the base as well, because, you know, there are lodestones all over that. And once you get down here, you sort of start to wonder, maybe that's some power connection that's no longer being used. I just kind of wanted to draw some tenuous connections between those things. Another thing that you'll notice here is that while there are plenty of bats, they're not nearly as loud as they normally would be. That's because I'm using an additional mod called Sound Controller. I'm going to link to it in the description because I think it's one of the best mods. Allows you to control individually the sounds of anything in the game. It's insanely useful. This is still really early phases here, so I'm not sure exactly what this room is going to look like by the time I'm done with it. If you have any ideas, let me know. I'll probably extend pipes or something like them into other parts of the base. And who knows, maybe I'll have them trigger as well when this beam changes color. This is the control room for the beacon. You can see the panes of glass which are being rotated around above the beacon here. And you can see that there is a dropper that's attached to a clock, and that's giving us our random output that triggers the system. We can head back up. This is the control panel for the chest update detector. You can see we can update the chest by pretty much doing anything next to it. But if we keep going down, we'll find another tiny room here. This is right underneath the lava lake that you saw when we went to the panda statue. You know, you can go in and grab lava and put it in this shulker box loader. To be honest, I don't really use this room that much. It was just a fun challenge to try and put some walls up and put some designs in here, given the extremely limited space. I also kind of wanted to show off some of the decorated pots, but really there's nothing in here. I'm planning to come back and add a little bit more to this room. I'll just have to find a little bit more time for it. I've got so many other active projects. If we head up and take a right, we will find a bubble elevator. This is my Geode research outpost. I actually found out about this place because hostile mobs kept spawning above my base and I could just hear them constantly. So I came up here to light the area and was just kind of blown away by how pretty it was. I felt like something needed to be put here. And I didn't know what until I started digging and eventually found a geode. And so that got me thinking, maybe there's an interesting story we can tell here. I wanted this to feel like an outpost where the Bearcats had maybe sent researchers to study amethysts and geodes and maybe even the wildlife here. So we have a pretty simple setup here. I think there's still a bit of work left to do in terms of decorating it. We see we've got a bunch of amethyst geode stuff there. Got a small campfire here. So I've actually done a lot of terraforming here. I added a lot of the vegetation that you can see around the ceiling and kind of over here as well. I also put water through most of this and dug out some paths. I might build a little bit more structure up here, but this also feels like the right level of landscaping for an area that really hasn't been explored all that much. If anything, I think I'll probably just build out the wild vegetation more and just make it feel more overgrown. So if we open this fence gate, we can hop on down. Down this path, we've got a little sort of mining operation. If we head over this bridge, we can see the geode farm. This is Ilmango's design. Here we have all of the shulker compression. I want to build this out a little bit more into more of a pier that goes out onto this side. But for now, we have a little dock that we can go fishing on. So something that you'll also notice is that these axolotls are just tearing through the tropical fish here. This is something that's kind of like constantly happening. And it gave me this idea to make some basket-style fish traps that could maybe collect those drops. And so here's what I tried. I got some hopper minecarts in here, put some oak trapdoors around the sides, and bamboo trapdoors on the top. And I really like how it came out look-wise. And what's even better than that is these things actually collect fish, which is crazy to me. And to get out, we just have to hit this button and drop down. And we are now on my second floor. I honestly have no idea what I'm going to put here. If you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments. We can see that that central pillar leads up to here. So we've got a creeper that I've trapped here. He won't actually explode. And Bun here, standing guard. Over here we have a pretty simple bamboo farm. I think the only relevant thing here is that I have an off switch, which just means that we get a nice view when this grows and saves us a little bit of lag when we don't need bamboo. This was a really early and kind of critical contraption. This is a classic stone generator. So I started messing around and trying to use a hopper clock that would just move you back and forth so that you could double your output in an AFK mode. Over here we've got a mini library. This is where I've decided to organize most of my enchantments for the moment. I have some frames here that sort of help you figure out which enchantments are on which shelves. I got really excited when chiseled bookshelves were announced, and I think as time has gone on, we've found some really great uses for them. But ironically, storing your enchanted books in them is not one of those. Mainly because you can't really see the enchantments on the books until you take them out. So I think I might swap these out, or maybe just put books in there for decoration that I don't plan on using, and hiding the real books inside of barrels underneath these frames. This is the top of the crop farm here. Another thing that I've auto-crafted with command blocks is the honey block production. Making honey blocks is honestly even more annoying than dealing with kelp, because you have to work with stacks of 16, and you need to do stuff with the bottles, and just inventory management gets annoying. Like, it's just a huge pain in the butt. So this was the process I was probably most excited to replace with command blocks. And I think in terms of automation, that's kind of like a balance that every player needs to strike. Like, you need to figure out what parts of the game are you looking to remove through automation. And for me, if I can remove the things that make me want to play less, I feel like it's overall a healthy change. If we head back over here, you can see some special books and bookshelves and some cool floating candles. I really wanted this area to stand out and seem like a kind of magical, special area to kind of draw people in. And the books here are actually related to the lore of the world. I've just written one so far. I thought this was just kind of like a cool thing to have so that the other players could look around and read, and it kind of gives me an opportunity to tie the builds together with a formal story. And I'm not going to take you through it, of course, but I'll scroll through the pages in case you wanted to see on your own. Volume 1 is titled Unearthing the Great Devourer, which talks about one of the major discoveries that the Bearcats made while they were here. Again, I just wanted to sort of generate more intrigue and get people interested in exploring this area and this world more. So one of the cool aspects of this is that this is actually linked to a secret door. If we set this book to the right page, and we manipulate the books on this shelf in the right order, we can see that the wall opens. And we not only have access right here, so it's like obvious if you unlock it, but it also allows any players who are up here to walk through. And so usually I'll just leave this open for players. This combination lock with chiseled bookshelves is a design that I picked up from Angst 2000. Check out the description if you're interested in how that works. I think the one interesting thing that I've modified here is that I have included signal addition, which requires not only the right combination of chiseled books, but it also requires you to be on the correct page of the lore book. Most of this tunnel was not naturally occurring. I had to do a lot of it manually, so it just took a lot of time to get the space, and I'm still kind of thinking about what to put here. But I wanted to feel like the Bearcats were kind of discovering some trail. But yeah, we can head down this path, and you can see the first thing that we hit is this opening with a huge copper structure here. This is a copper farm design from Nembon. While I was digging this path, I found 2 zombie spawners that were close enough together that they could both be activated at the same time. But I was looking around, and then I saw Nembon's video on ways to amp up a zombie spawner by using the reinforcement mechanic. I'll put a link in the description for that in case you're curious. The way the reinforcement mechanic works is that when a zombie is attacked, it issues a call that can potentially summon more zombies. The cool thing about this is that reinforcements don't actually count towards the hostile mob cap. So we can have our mob switch on and still use this farm. In fact, we do have our mob switch on and we're using this farm. Let's keep going. We see another clearing here. The real story behind this is that we just needed a bunch of netherwort, so I planted a huge field of it, but then I got the idea, why not make this just an area of totally overgrown nether vegetation? Like those crops underneath the melon and pumpkin farm, they were probably taken from here. And I also wanted it to sort of look like that as we made our way in this direction, we started to see more and more nether stuff. Let's keep going. And this takes us to our final stop. So this ominous sign here rests the Devourer. This was my first really high effort build. As soon as I found this open cave, I kind of knew that I wanted to put a huge dragon here. And it was really hard to find one that was big enough. This dragon skeleton comes from Draco83NL. Check the description for a link. I pretty much copied from the schematic, but one thing that I did was add a little bit of texture and gradient to it, and I wanted to feel like this had been dug out of the deep slate. There was a lot of terraforming involved in this work, and honestly, it was a pretty big challenge, but I'm pretty happy with the end result here. I think I might build out more so it looks like there are some mining or excavation operations happening, or maybe even like a bridge that goes across that you can observe the dragon from. But let me drop down just so you can get really a sense of scale of how big this thing is. And we can actually step inside of this thing's mouth. If we look down here, there is yet another secret door. It's just a button that's hidden underneath the lava with a sign. And this thing is so big that we can actually walk through the spine. And if we venture into its belly, we will see why it's called the Great Devourer. You can see that the belly of this thing is just full of valuable resources. Gold, lapis, redstone, emerald, diamond even. In fantasy stories, dragons are famous for eating treasure. And with this build, I was kind of trying to add a twist that this dragon had an infinite appetite because it had a literally bottomless stomach that led to another dimension. That's why the dragon was named the Great Devourer. Devourer. Man, that's tough to say. And so, as you can guess, a ton of treasure along with other stuff went into the other side. And if you saw the Nether Castle in my last video, that's actually where this portal leads out. And so I wanted it to kind of be like an entire kingdom in the Nether was built off of the riches that came from this dragon's appetite for treasure. I'm planning on having this portal lead immediately to a huge treasure room, but I just haven't had a chance to build it out yet. So this brings us to the conclusion of my base tour. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope I gave you some maybe good ideas of things to do or maybe things not to do. This is really a new kind of video for me, so I'm still kind of figuring out exactly how I want to do these. Let me know if this type of content is something you're interested in seeing more of. My channel is always going to have a focus on redstone and providing you useful contraptions for your world. But I really like doing survival type content too, because it allows me to show you some new aspects of the game where I feel like I've been really focusing and developing. And I also like sharing parts of my world and my creative process with you. One idea that I had was that if you liked my approach to base building, I could start a series where I could build a mini base in a different biome or area with its own story in each episode. So let me know what you thought in the comments. If it gave you any ideas or if there's anything you wanted to see in more detail, I'd be happy to share more of it with you if you're interested. So I will leave it off there. Thank you all so much. It's been a blast. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you soon.